Hello and welcome, Birdwords 20. We made it, 20th episode of Birdwords, the fifth one in this video audio format thing. I'm gonna bring back the newsletter and make it written again in some way, but for now we're doing this. Also launched on Patreon last week, so that's pretty exciting. Gonna have an extra film breakdown there every week, along with scouting reports of each of the 32 NFL teams between now and August when preseason kicks off. So if you're interested in finding out more about a player you signed or a player your team signed, or maybe just more about the league, make sure to go check that out. The link will be in the bio below. And then also stay tuned for the end of this episode because I have a special interview with Connor Livesay, the film analyst and Cowboys blogger over at the SB Nation blog, Blogging the Boys. We're going to talk about the Dak Prescott contract situation, and we're going to get like an expert's opinion, a guy who watches the Cowboys every week, follows the Cowboys, and writes about them and has a better understanding of them than majority of us do. So yeah, stay tuned for that. And let's get right into this week's big news. Big report out of New England this week is that Tom Brady and Josh McDaniels' deteriorating relationship fueled the quarterback's exit from New England. Obviously, the quarterback left New England after the season, headed over to Tampa Bay. He's now playing for the Buccaneers. And apparently, there were a lot of rumors. I mean, rumors have been swirling for years that Brady and head coach Bill Belichick were like not too big on each other, and there was some like beef there. Obviously, there was that big report by ESPN that Kraft and Brady kind of on one team, and the other team was Belichick and Jimmy Garoppolo. And then Jimmy Garoppolo getting traded was kind of like to stick it to Belichick or something. Not sure how true that was. I mean, it sounded kind of like a bit much. Like there was stuff in there like Jimmy Garoppolo went to the TB12 workout facility or something, and just they locked the doors on him and wouldn't let him in. Some crazy stuff like that. But now reports are saying that Brady might have actually had issues with Josh McDaniels, the offensive coordinator over in New England. So here's a quote from NFL Network's. From an NFL Network reporter. Tom was worn out by Josh after all these years. It's interesting. I feel that if two things. So one, Brady apparently has beef with Josh McDaniels and Belichick. Maybe the problem is Brady. I mean, he seems like a pretty cool, pretty nice guy, but I don't know. I feel like if these reports keep coming out that you're beefing with all your coaches, then calm down, Tom. Like you're not always the biggest guy in the room. But then also, it could be bullshit because, again, we had these same reports about him and Bill Belichick. So the idea that it's happening again and that these same rumors are coming out again about a different coach mean that it might just be people, like, grasping for straws to find a story about Tom Brady because, I mean, it gets clicks. I'm talking about it. We clicked the article, just got a ton of clicks. I think 500 comments on this Bleacher Report article. That's rare. So yeah, also, if you remember Josh McDaniels, he's an interesting character too. Obviously, he was hired as the Denver Broncos head coach a few years back. And then before they even like played a game, or before even training camp started, I think, he just backed out and back to New England. So he's an interesting character. Maybe not the nicest guy either. So a lot going on there. Both McDaniels and Brady responded to this. Both of them said that basically it's trash and that there's no bad blood between themselves. But that's about a standard answer. Like, it'd be weird if either of them came out and were like, yeah, actually, fuck that guy. But so I don't put too much stock into that either. Like, obviously, a player and a coach are going to deny it because they want to keep which is good that they did, but they want to keep like a outward professional look. But yeah, just I guess it doesn't matter anymore because Brady's over in Tampa. But more of a look into behind the scenes, into a place we don't get many behind the scenes look into. Everything feels like it's on lock in New England, despite the fact that over the years we've gotten a few reports that things might not be chugging along as smoothly as they seem. They're still winning though, so we'll see, and we'll see if they can continue winning with Jarrett Stidham or whoever is their quarterback this year. I'm still so confused about what they're doing there. I can't imagine they're going to be starting Jarrett Stidham or Brian Hoyer as quarterback in 2020. And now let's go over to the dumbest story. The big Seattle Seahawks Myles Garret trade. So yeah, some guy on Reddit, his name is Everybody Loves Nudes. That is the NFL source here. We have Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, and Everyone Loves Nudes as our top NFL insiders right now. But yeah, so he basically posted on Reddit, the Seahawks subreddit, that there was a deal in place to send Myles Garret, the Cleveland Browns star pass rusher, over to Seattle. Obviously, Garrett his 5th-year option with the Cleveland Browns is just accepted ahead of his 4th year. They're working on an extension for him, as obviously he has been one of their best defensive players over the year, but there has been some issues with him. Obviously, he tried to kill Mason Rudolph on the football field last year, so you could see maybe Cleveland wanting to move on for him instead of paying someone who did something like that and keeping them around, maybe just kind of being, all right, like you tried to kill someone, so maybe we want to move on from you and continue without you. But I that would be a dumb move. But I at least see the logic of it. Yeah, so this guy, Everyone Loves Nudes, made a post. It got picked up by a local Seattle radio station who actually brought him on the radio. They brought this guy on the radio to talk about, this guy's name is Everyone Loves Nudes, and they brought him on the radio to talk about how the Seahawks were trading for the star pass rusher. So, like, this got real attention. It was all over Twitter. It was all over Reddit. It was all over everywhere. And it was just fake. The guy posted later on Reddit that this was revenge for the Fail Mary. Like, he was like, it's been 7 years, 17 hours, and whatever the amount of time was. And he's like, this is basically his revenge. Obviously, the Fail Mary aired on ESPN. The iconic Monday Night Football game was re-aired on ESPN a few days ago. So I guess it's put in his mind, and he found a way to leak a fake trade. It's just so confusing. Who at this Seahawks radio station is like, yes, let's book this guy from Reddit to go on the radio and give fake reports, outright failure from at the KJR, I think it was called. Yeah, Sports Radio KJR. I mean, like, what? Your Seahawks insider is a random Reddit guy. Like, you're a sports radio station. You're probably credentialed, right? Like, you can't do any better than a random Reddit guy named Everyone Loves Nudes. But yeah, so yeah, it was all fake. Charles Robinson, he debunked it, and then it came out later that it was all trash. Again, like, here, since the Fail Mary, I've not gotten my revenge. I don't know a player on the team. Like, yeah, like, he basically just made something up to get revenge for the Fail Mary. From his end, this is hilarious, and good job for him for actually managing to get on the radio, but absolute failure from KJR. They have to internally look at who allowed this to happen and figure out how to fix this, make sure it doesn't happen again, because this is a terrible look for their radio station and for sports radio in general. Sports radio is it's pretty bad. In Detroit, we have some local. I'm in DC, but the team I write about in Detroit, like, a lot of garbage from our sports radio too. I remember they reported that Khalil Mack was in a taxi headed to the Lions facility for a physical, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, the Lions are trading for Khalil Mack," and then that was just bullshit. Just nothing. So yeah, sports radio is bad. Don't listen to it. Listen to podcasts instead. And in news that went under the radar, the Cincinnati Bengals SB blog, Cincy Jungle, wrote about how the pass interference replay rule, which obviously was very controversial, it was implemented last year and was essentially useless. It is gone. The rule was implemented on a per-year basis. Basically, the first year was going to be a test run, essentially, and they were going to vote to renew it in 2020. None of the NFL owners decided to even put it up for vote, so it's not even like it got voted down, just no one even bothered to vote for it in the first place. So the rule's gone. Obviously, this rule came in. It was really annoying. Almost every challenge failed because refs didn't want to overwrite themselves, and the guy in New York didn't want to kind of disrespect the refs by overwriting their calls. So you had some calls that were like ridiculously bad, like very clear missed calls. And the guy in New York, a replay review guy in New York, would just uphold the call, and it just wasted our time, and it was just really dumb and bad. So the rule's gone because no one liked it. Fans didn't like it. I don't think players really liked it. Coaches didn't like it. Apparently the owners didn't like it either. So yeah, the NFL undoes a huge mistake, and I'm really happy this rule's gone. I actually hated this rule. And finally, the thing that's dominated headlines, the biggest story in the NFL right now is the Dak Prescott contract situation. Obviously, the quarterback, because he was drafted in the 4th round instead of the 1st round, his contract ended at the end of the 2019. Or sorry, his contract will end at the end of the 2020 season. This is his contract year. Or sorry, no. I'm sorry. His contract ended. Now he's on the transition tag. So he's on I was thinking 2017, but yeah, no, 2016. So his contract ended. He's technically a free agent. He obviously was franchise tagged by the Dallas Cowboys, meaning they had to hold on to him for an additional year. But they might want to hold on to him long term. He's obviously one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, in my opinion, a top 5, top 10 guy. We'll see what Connor says in a bit, but I think Dak's an elite quarterback, and any team that lets him walk is dumb. They're just fools. And it looks like, so apparently there were initial reports that he was looking for around $40 million a year. It looks like that number is around like 35 from what it sounds like. Yeah, Cowboys have offered Prescott $35 million over 5 years. And Prescott apparently seems fine with the monetary amount. It's the years he doesn't like. He wants a 4-year contract so he can hit free agency again and hopefully cash out one last time. Which, I mean, from both sides, this makes sense. I see why the Cowboys obviously want to give him a 5-year deal. You have a quarterback. You want quarterback contracts are resetting the market. It feels like every year we're getting a new record deal. So on their end, keeping Prescott around for one additional year on a $35 million contract is very, very valuable because it means that you delay the next contract and the next contract will, I mean, it might be like $50 million a year by then, it's the way things are looking. Well, Prescott, on the other hand, he's 27 years old. In 4 years, well, he will be 27. He's 26 right now, but he will be 27 years old when the 2020 season begins. So, in his mind, when the 4-year contract ends, he'll be 31, meaning that if he hits the open market when he's 31, he can cash out a year early, or what more likely happens is when he's 30 years old, which is usually the prime year for quarterbacks, he'll be up for an extension with the Cowboys, and he can just cash out. Like, if he continues playing like this, and he might only get better, obviously, like I said, like 30 years old, that's like the prime year for quarterbacks. So being available for contract extension right at age 30 that's ideal for the player as well. So this creates a weird spot where I think both parties are justified. Prescott obviously wants to maximize his career earnings. He's even willing to sacrifice a bit of long-term security for that. While on the other hand, the Cowboys are also thinking long-term, where they clearly like Dak and they want to keep him around. I mean, they're giving him more of a deal, more years than what he actually wants. So it's just an interesting situation because it's not even like a meet in the middle thing, right? You can't do 4.5 years. No, it's 4 years or 5 years. I guess the way this will turn out is maybe Dak gets a bit of a pay bump. Either Dak will get a bit of a pay bump above the 35 million, like maybe he'll get to 40 mil, and though he'll take the 4 years, or he'll take a bit of a pay cut, so he'll go down to 32 million or something, and take the 5 years. But that's where we are now with this contract situation. But it's an interesting one because usually when there's contract disputes like this, it's about worth. It's like the player thinks he's worth 30 million and the team thinks he's worth 20 million, and then they go back and forth about that. But there's nothing to do with that. It seems like it's 35 million. They both agree with that number. That number seems fine. It's more just Dak wants to hit the open market 1 year earlier, while the Cowboys obviously want to delay that as much as possible because they know the next contract will be more expensive. But also Dak, you don't really know what's going to happen in the future of your career. You don't know if you're going to get injured. You don't know if you're going to start playing badly. Maybe taking that extra year of security would be nice, but obviously it's up to him. He's betting on himself basically, which I'm never against. Take a risk. If you want to maximize your career earnings, you have to take a risk, and that's what he's doing. So yeah, interesting spot, and probably something we'll be keeping an eye on over the next. Honestly, with no other NFL news, this is probably the biggest news for months. And now we're gonna go talk to Connor about what he thinks about the Dak Prescott contract situation. And here we are with Connor. Hey, Connor, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me on. Excited to be on and talk some football.
Yeah, nice to get a distraction from the weirdness of the world right now. So, Dak Prescott, obviously the biggest story in the NFL right now is his contract situation with the Dallas Cowboys. And as a Cowboys blogger and Cowboys analyst, I guess, what do you think about the current situation? Are the Cowboys making a mess of it? Do you think they're handling it well? What's your opinion in general?
It's hard to even give you a argument to how they could be handling it well because you look at Jared Goff and Carson Wentz, two guys who were drafted in that same class who got paid, last year before the season started. So, their teams were, excited about the future of those guys, even though there's a lot of questions about those guys, whether it was health or play outside of structure for Jared Goff, with pressure. So, there's a lot of questions regarding those guys' future, but they went ahead and gave those guys big contracts. And, the Cowboys went into this season with we'll let you prove it. You'll go into your final year of your deal without a deal, and then we'll reevaluate next season. Well, he kind of had a really good year, statistically, analytically, tape-wise. You go back and watch the tape. I thought he had a fantastic year. So, I think they dropped the ball on this one because think they didn't expect for him to play as good as they did, but also the team didn't have success. So they're kind of stuck right now between, are we really going to pay a guy $35 to $36 million, $110 million guaranteed that wasn't able to make the playoffs last year, but at the same time the numbers and the tape says he played really well. So it's a tough spot, but it's a spot that they kind of put themselves in by, making improvement this year.
And you bring up Jared Goff and Carson Wentz, but do you think maybe the fact that the Rams and Eagles might be regretting those contracts a little by now? Obviously, the Rams are in cap hell. The Eagles drafted a quarterback in the second round. Do you think that might even be an argument in favor of the Cowboys for not giving Dak the deal he wants? Because, look what happened to his two comrades, I guess.
Right. Yeah, it's one way to look at it for sure. They could be looking at it and be like, look, the Rams can't afford anything now. They're cutting good players. They're doing crazy things with their newly signed free agents to get them under the cap. And then, you can make the argument with, like you said, with the Eagles, they just drafted a quarterback in the second round. The first playoff game that Carson Wentz plays in, he doesn't make it out of the first quarter, and they're kind of stuck right now with we have a good quarterback, but he just can't stay healthy and we can't really trust him. So, that's definitely one way to look at it. But I do think with Dak, you get a guy who's going to be durable. He was banged up for the first time in his career some last year, and he didn't play great in those games. But I just think when you look at Dak Prescott's career trajectory, you see a guy who's improved almost every year, in my opinion. He's always been dealt a pretty poor hand from a coaching standpoint. Kellen Moore was a breath of fresh air last year to kind of get some new tendencies in that offense, but it still was under Jason Garrett's control, and there was times where you could tell Jason Garrett still had his grips pretty tight on that playbook. So, we're hoping this year Mike McCarthy brings a new, influence into that offense and opens things up a little bit more. But I just think the ceiling, for Dak with what you've seen in 2019 and the growth you can kind of see and project with, better players around him again with CeeDee Lamb and then, a new coaching staff, the sky's really the limit for him. And I think you got to lock those guys up before they start demanding that Patrick Mahomes type money.
And one report kind of flying around is actually the Cowboys and Dak seem to agree on the value of his contract on a per-year basis, around $35 million. But Dak wants a 4-year deal, obviously, so he can free agency a little earlier in the future, while the Cowboys want to give him a 5-year deal. Do you think whether it's a 4 or 5-year deal, that's approximately the right price point for on both ends? Like that's how much Dak is worth on his side, and that's how much the Cowboys should pay him?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think anything under like $34 million, you're giving the Cowboys a major break, in my opinion, because I think Russell's making 35 and he got his deal the year before last. Goff and Wentz are making in that 32 to 33 range. So, again, I think $35 million is like really, the baseline of where things should be. And I think going too far over that, you're probably getting a little ridiculous with your demands. But, the quarterback position and the value that they bring, you kind of, if you have a good one, you pay them whatever they want. It's not always the right thing, and it's not always the best thing for your team building. But, we always kind of make fun of the Seahawks because, Russell Wilson is literally that entire team, and people, question, well, could we do more if we had more money to spend on other positions? And the answer is no. Like, if that team didn't have Russell Wilson, they would be a mess. So, I'm not comparing Dak to Russell Wilson. I'm just comparing the value of quarterbacks. And if you have a guy that you kind of see as a top 7, 8 quarterback in the league, you kind of just got to give those guys whatever they want. But like you said, I think it's a difference in 1 year right now, and I think it's the Cowboys being stubborn like they kind of always are with these contracts because they want to get them done their way so they can continue to give out contracts the way they want to and have a history to jot back to and go, hey, look, this is what we've done in the past. So that's definitely what's going on right now. It seems like, maybe there's a slight difference in guaranteed money as well. But, I think if it's just that 1 year, it's eventually going to come, I think the Cowboys will eventually cave and, give Dak the 4-year deal, and which I don't really understand. And, I'm going to ask you because I feel like I'm crazy, but, like, if you're a team that's, like, kind of seems like they're not completely sold on the quarterback, wouldn't you rather have 1 year shorter of a deal so if it isn't what you want, you can get out of it a little bit quicker with not a lot of dead money going on?
Yeah, I guess. I that's so,
that's what I don't get. It's like if you're not sold on the guy, like would you rather give him a 4-year deal than a 5-year deal? Or I don't understand that whole whole debacle.
I guess the way I've personally been seeing is that the Cowboys are definitely fully believe in him if they're willing to give him 5 years. Obviously the fact that they're offering a 5-year deal instead of a 4-year deal not only says they want him for the next 4 years, it means they want him for beyond that too, right? Because they want
Right,
to give
right.
him the third contract.
Yeah.
So they're definitely sold on him. It's just a dumb media narrative, in my opinion.
Right,
Yeah.
right, yeah, and that's what I was referring to. Everybody saying, everybody in the national media being like, "Oh, they're not sold on him yet." I'm like, well, they're offering him 5 years instead of 4 years. If that's sort of a,
They're thinking
we'd
about
like to
contract
spread this
3.
money out. Right, yeah. So
Yeah. Oh.
I don't know. It's crazy, but
So obviously they have him on a tag right now, on the transition tag right now, and probably what they're thinking is that, well, they'll see how he does in 2020, and then think about giving him the long-term deal in 2021. But do you think that's actually a smart move, or should they just get business done right now?
I definitely think you should just get it done right now, because the last thing you want to do, not the last thing, because if this does happen, then you obviously don't mind doing it. But if Dak goes out, plays better than he did in 2019, which is, we're now talking about a top 3 or 4 quarterback in the NFL, in my opinion, the teams win more games because they do have a better coaching staff. They have a better defensive philosophy. The special teams isn't the worst unit of all time. Like, if they go out and win 12 games, 11 games, they win a couple playoff games, they make it to the NFC Championship game, then you're talking about paying him $40 million a year. So you're increasing that value. If you, like you said, if you know he's the guy, which I think me and you believe that they think he's the guy and they believe in him, like, the more you wait, the more that price tag is going to go up. And I just don't know why you would want that to happen. I'd rather just get it done, give him the year less that he's asking for, give him $35 million, guarantee him that $106, $107 million a year, and then just, reevaluate it in 3 or 4 years when the contracts get ready to run out. But I feel like if he performs at a higher level, which I could see it definitely happening with the addition of C.D. Lamb and Mike McCarthy, and the defense likely to come back a little bit better and the special teams likely to come back a little bit better, you're looking at a situation where in 2021 he could be demanding $42 million a year, with Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes maybe getting paid before that as well. So, I would definitely do it now, but that's just my stupid opinion, and they don't care what I have to say.
Is there a chance at all that Dak plays for a team that isn't the Dallas Cowboys in 2021 in your mind, or is this just a matter of two parties being stubborn?
I think it's that. I'm not going to say no, because, if you would have asked me at the midpoint of the year last year if Dak would not have a new contract, I'd say you're crazy, and he doesn't yet. So, again, they have until July 15th, if I'm not mistaken, until, he has to either sign the deal or sign the franchise tag or not. And I think, that might be that time frame could be the more logical, time frame that you'll start looking into. Okay, why does he have a contract now? Why not? Okay, let's get serious on if he's going to play on the franchise tag or if he's not. So that's probably your time frame you're looking for to really get worried about it if you are. But I don't think so. I don't think that the Cowboys have been awful at finding quarterbacks. They went from Tony Romo, an undrafted guy that they stumbled into, to Dak Prescott, a fourth-round guy that they stumbled into. But if you look at the track record of their drafted quarterbacks and undrafted quarterbacks that they've tried to develop over the years, it's been pretty embarrassing. So I think the last thing they want to do is go back into a pool of trying to find a quarterback. Last time they were in that pool, they desperately tried to trade up for Paxton Lynch in the first round, and then they desperately tried to trade up for Connor Cook in the second round. And thankfully, they fell flat on their face in that. And Dak Prescott fell in their lap in the fourth round, because we'd be in a world of hurt right now if Connor Cook or Paxton Lynch was the quarterback for the Cowboys.
And you mentioned that with another good season, you think Dak Prescott can move into the realm of like top 3 quarterback in the NFL. Where right now, in May 12th, 2020, would you rank him? Top 5 quarterback, top 10 guy, average guy?
In my opinion, I think he's a top 7 quarterback in the NFL. I think you got your Patrick Mahomes and your Drew Breeses and your Russell Wilsons, who are your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys. You talk about your Lamar Jacksons in there as well. And I think after you get away from your Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, those guys, I feel like those 3 to 7 guys are almost on the same tier of player. Drew Brees is kind of on his way out, still a very effective guy, but I think that you're talking about your Deshaun Watsons, your Dak Prescott, your Lamar Jacksons all in the same breath, and I think there's not a whole lot there to separate those guys. Some of the analytics favor one guy more than the other. Some of the tape favors one guy more than the other. Some of the running abilities favor one guy more than the other. So, it's just kind of a coin flip with a lot of those guys in that 4 to 7 range, and I think that Dak's definitely in that conversation.
And to zoom out beyond Dak and just the Cowboys in general, are you happy with how their offseason has gone so far with their draft and free agency, or do you like the moves they made, and do you think they could be a playoff team in 2020?
Yeah, I do. I have been pretty frustrated with the way they've handled free agency the last few years, and I think this year, they get rid of Jason Garrett, they get rid of some of the old veteran, stubborn defensive guys who I think were help making a lot of those decisions on who would get brought in and who wouldn't. And they bring in guys like Gerald McCoy, Dontari Poe, 2 interior defensive linemen that they have just completely ignored that position for the last 4 to 5 years. So, again, those guys aren't spring chickens by any means who are going to come in and just, be dominant, but they're quality, starting to rotational players that would be some of the better players the Cowboys have seen at that position in some years. And then, you talk about some of the other moves they made. I love their draft, but just in free agency, I didn't love Clinton-Dix, but I think that signing is a smart signing because they didn't have depth at the safety position, and he's veteran depth. So they bring a veteran proven guy in that can help start, can help, be a depth piece on that back end of the secondary. And then the draft, you mentioned the draft. I love what they did with CeeDee Lamb. I think that's a pick there that they're not making years in the past with a very good player falling to them. We watched them pass up on Juan Thornhill and Taylor Rapp last year for Tristan Hill in the second round, and that one stung. But they didn't make that same mistake again. They stayed true to the board and took CeeDee Lamb, who was the best player available at the 17th overall pick. So I love that. I really like Trayvon Diggs fell to him at 51. I wasn't a huge fan of his. He was being mentioned in a 17th pick range and possibly a trade back range. I didn't love that, but to get that caliber of player at 51 was huge. And then they back it up with Neville Gallimore and Reggie Robinson on the 3rd and 4th round picks. And I really just love what they did through that, entire draft, really. I thought they really hit a home run there.
Yeah, they really loaded up at defensive tackle now. They're really thinking about it. Gerald McCoy, Dontari Poe, Gallimore in the 3rd round, a guy who's, pretty raw, but he could be a star too. They re-signed their nose tackle, Antoine Woods, I believe. Yeah, just crazy defensive tackle room there. They did lose Malik Collins. Are you happy? Were you big on Malik Collins? He's a player that when I was watching the Cowboys, he really jumped out to me as a really good player.
Right, yeah. Like that's the perfect, like the way you describe him, like he's a guy that just jumps out at you when you watch the tape because he's an upfield disruptive player. The bad thing about the Cowboys' defensive line the last few years is Rod Marinelli is a coach who, lives and dies on getting upfield and, disrupting the pocket. So the running game was absolutely destroyed when teams would, use the trap game, when they would, get into the zone blocking game. When their defensive linemen weren't able to get upfield and disrupt zone blocking, it was a long day for the Cowboys defense. Malik Collins was an up-the-field player. So, he was a guy that he'd get upfield, he'd be disruptive, but he would get out of gaps. He would, he wouldn't play with great pad level. So, there was a lot of good with Malik Collins from a pass rush standpoint because he was a disruptive player, but he also gave up a ton of plays in the running game. And he had a lot of health issues throughout his career at Dallas. So just a player you really couldn't rely on from a game-to-game, week-to-week basis, but a guy who would flash and would offer some pass rush when he was healthy and on the field.
Mm-hmm. And obviously the NFC East is projecting to be a mess right now. It looks like the Eagles not sure what they're doing. The Giants and Washington, they both not very good either. Do you think the Cowboys are going to win the division this year? How many wins do you think it will take them to win the division this year? Like, what do you see from them?
I think they will because I think the Giants and Redskins are just terrible. I don't think either one of the guys have a quarterback right now. Probably more so Washington than the Giants. I like Dwayne Haskins more than Daniel Jones, but I don't love either one of those guys. So, and there hasn't been a repeat winner in the NFC East since, I was born. So I'm going to have to say that the Cowboys are going to win since the Eagles won last year, but that's just based off of prior history. But, again, it's so, this is the first year in 12 years, I guess, that you're going into the season with like not, you don't really know what's going to happen, because with Jason Garrett, it was like, hey, we're going to be okay. We're never going to get over the hump. We'll be 8-8, to 9-7, and hopefully one of the quarterbacks will get hurt. We'll be able to sneak into the playoffs and then get bounced the first round. So that's what we've been dealing with the last decade. So it's just nice to not. It could be worse, but we just don't know that for sure, and that's honestly a nice feeling.
So do you think, like, if they end up winning 9 games, like they go 9-7, do you think that's enough this year? Or because that's usually the range they're in, the Cowboys.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think 10 wins we'll have to do it this year. I like what I do like what the Eagles did, going out and trading for Darius Slay. I know you're real familiar with him. I think he's a really good
Yeah.
football player. Mikel Roby-Coleman, I like that addition as well. They still have some questions at safety, and at linebacker. There's definitely some questions, but I think that they kind of fixed their biggest weakness, and that was their secondary. They lost Jason Peters, so their offensive line might take a step down as well. But I mean, again, I like Philadelphia's roster. It's just all going to go back to, can Carson Wentz stay healthy, and can that offense click consistently, because they've been inconsistent too. I think you'll probably need 10 wins to win the division, just because I don't see Dallas or Philadelphia sweeping one or the other. I think they're going to probably split their games like they normally do. And then, I know that Philadelphia's strength of schedule is a little bit harder than Dallas's. So, I think it's probably going to come down to 9-7, 10-6 wins the division, which I think is doable for both teams. So, it could end up taking 11 or 12 wins, but, I think the Cowboys have a good shot at winning the division this year. They have a better head coach, in my opinion. They have better defensive coaching, which I think is going to be more important than the head coach and offensive coach changes. So if that defense can improve in the special teams unit, which was just absolutely imbecile last year, if that can be just mediocre to above average, then I just feel like the Cowboys probably have the most talented roster, and the better quarterback. So that always gives me a good faith in them winning the division.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Connor. You can find all of Connor's work at SB Nation's Blogging the Boys or at Sports Talk Line. He's also on a podcast for Blogging the Boys. He also has a lot of cool Twitter stuff. There's a big Twitter thread of Dak Prescott's 2019 in his pinned tweet, and just Cowboys film all the time. Yeah, thank you for joining me, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It was fun.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, man.
Hey, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to keep up with the channel. If you're into more Dallas Cowboys content, then I'll have a Dak Prescott film breakdown exclusively on Patreon this Friday. So make sure to subscribe there so you can see that and find out more about the Dallas Cowboys quarterback and what I think about him. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at Mr. Shaheen. Follow the podcast on Twitter at BirdWordsPod, and also follow Connor on Twitter at Connor NFL Draft. Yeah, thank you for watching, and goodbye.